Hello again, YouTube. My name is Bree, and in today's video, we are doing the penultimate video in this Birdtober sketchbook series. I'm not saying that this is definitely the last Birdtober mini bird painting I'm going to be doing, but I am just about done with the sketchbook. I only have 3 left after today's, so there'll be one more video, and then we'll see. I don't know what I'll be doing for the rest of the month, but in terms of videos, I'm probably going to take a break because it's been a lot and I need that break. So I did zoom in more. I didn't want to mess with the camera angles too much because I didn't want to be fussing with it every day, since it is hard to find time to film and draw every day. But hopefully this helps. So to those who requested a closer view of what's going on, I hope this works. Let me know. So I'm starting today with the White Ibis. The White Ibis used to be an exceptionally common bird in my local area. Once again, if you haven't seen the other videos, this is all about me painting birds that are very common in my local area in Central Florida. So the White Ibis used to be a bird I would see every time I walked out the door, either in the ponds or in my neighbors' yards. They didn't like my yard so much, and I don't know why, but I haven't seen as many of them recently, so I don't know if they just went into a mating time where they locked up somewhere else, or if they went back to the coast. So one of the things I learned about these birds, they breed on the coast, but they forage inland. So the adult birds will feed on fish and crustaceans, but their chicks or their young, I'm not sure if they're actually called chicks, they can't tolerate salt. So they have a very limited amount of salt they could take in, so the birds tend to forage inland for the young. So with those massive beaks they have, they're really good about like getting into the yard and pulling up worms and grubs. So that's more for their young than for the birds, the adults themselves. And it's really nice when they do that to your yard because they aerate it and the yard's happier. So maybe I need to go bury some worms in my yard so I can lure in these guys. But this particular one, you're going to see it more with an orange beak here. During mating season, though, their beaks, faces, and legs will turn red as part of their display. So I went with more their default orange state, but they get really, really vibrant. And they are almost otherwise all white, except when they extend their wings, you could see that the tips of their primaries have a dark gray or black feather. So when they're either flying or when they're just stretching their wings, you could see that they do have a little bit of blackish gray to them, but otherwise they really do have really pretty white feathers. I'm losing my voice already. Oops. So otherwise, these birds used to be called, or in some cases are still called, a Florida chicken, or more specifically, and I don't know how to pronounce this correctly, but the Chokoloskee chicken. So there's an area with that name in Southwest Florida, and apparently these birds actually used to be hunted for food there, so they just refer to them as a chicken. They are not chickens, they are ibises, but luckily protective measures have been put in place, and they are no longer hunted, or at least not widely hunted in Florida, so yay. But otherwise, they are very similar to another bird that we also have here called a Glossy Ibis, another type of ibis. They stand about the same height, but the Glossy Ibis is all black. They have the iridescent feathers, much like the grackles or the crows, so they do have color in direct sunlight, but without that direct sunlight, they do look to be all black. And they actually intermingle. I mentioned before that a lot of pond birds tend to form rookeries, and they all spend a lot of time together. And the black and white ibises, no problem hanging out together. So hopefully we'll see more of them soon because I miss seeing them all over the place. The next bird on the list is the Killdeer. And this is a weird little bird. So I went rollerblading on Sunday, and I wasn't really sure what to paint next. Doing a challenge for this many days, I was starting to hit that point of low motivation. So I was hoping to see a bunch of birds, and I did. And I decided that the first bird I saw that I hadn't painted yet would be today's bird. So I saw this guy right away, a group of 3 or 4 of them hanging out by a pond. And I actually hadn't seen them quite as much recently, so that was pretty exciting. these birds have massive eyes, the body of like not a lean pond bird typically, and really long stick legs that are common with a plover. So they're a little unusual looking, and much like a Pokemon, they actually say their name, or rather they're named for the sound they make, but their calls are apparently either Killdeer, Dee or Deer. Now, these guys are apparently known for how loud they are, and yet I've never heard them talk. I see them often enough, but they're usually just like hanging out, hunting, running across the street, doing their thing. So I haven't heard them, but yeah, I guess they're named for the noise they make, including their scientific name, which is vociferous, because of how vocal they are. So besides being goofy looking little birds, the Killdeer is known for its distraction display. So if they're out and about and they see a would-be predator and they are close to their nest or their young, they put on a display to pretend they're injured to lure predators away. So what they do is they extend their wing, one of their wings, and they kind of drag it along the ground while limping along to make it look like they're crippled. So the would-be predator goes for the easy prey, sees it limping, goes for it, and then once the Killdeer is far enough away, they take off, fly away, continuing to lure the predator away, and then they circle back to their nest. So pretty clever. Otherwise, I don't have too much to say about these guys. I don't really know too much about them, and apparently their biggest thing is that distraction display and their noise, so neither of which I've experienced. Mostly, to me, they just have chibi eyes and long legs, and I love them. So just going back to the supplies, because I kind of skipped that at the beginning. As a reminder, all supplies are in the description below, but the sketchbook is a Hahnemühle 2x2 ZigZag. The palette is the Etchr miniature palette, mostly with Daniel Smith watercolors, and the brushes are Princeton brushes, and since they are so small, they do fit really well in those tiny wells. I have had some questions about that. I do love this palette. It's been really handy for when I traveled, back when people traveled before. Yeah. But this was great because I had so many color options in so little space, and even with a size 8 brush, I didn't really have trouble getting paint out of this palette. The mixing area is sufficiently large for me since I don't mix up large pools of paint. But yeah, I could see if you're used to working with bigger wells or half pans or even full pans and you need more space for mixing, I understand this probably isn't for you, and that's fine. But it does work great for me, and I did want to say that because I have had questions about it. If it were today and I was looking to buy one of these palettes, I would get the other one that has slightly bigger wells. Etchr only had this one at the time, but honestly, I would probably just take a very small palette of 12 colors or something now, because since I bought this, I've learned a lot about color mixing, and this really is excessive. I'm using it for this series because it's cute and small and it fits really well with the birds, but yeah. So the final bird of the day is the Great Egret. On that rollerblade that's skating when I was skating the other day. Like I said, I saw the Killdeer first. The next birds I saw were the model ducks that I had already painted, and then I saw this big old Great Egret fly across the road right in front of me. So I wanted to paint it flying because I'd already done cranes and herons just kind of hanging out. And I find the way that they pose while flying really interesting because they curve that neck in and they look very unusual. Great egrets also flap their wings very slowly, so it's really, I'm assuming they're not the most graceful creatures in the sky, but they get where they need to be, so it works for them. So they're named for their long silky plumes, which are apparently called egrets. Their plumes fill out more while they're mating, and I tried to paint this one like it would look in mating season. So in the Little Blue Heron segment, I believe, I talked about how I read that while they weren't hunted for their plumes, the rookeries took a hit because other birds were hunted for their plumes, and it really hurt the population of the little blue heron. And I said at that time that I wanted to do more research on that because I didn't know much about it. Well, the opportunity came up because the great egret and the snowy egrets were absolutely hunted for their plumes. So during the early 20th century, when feathers were a big part of attire, think 20s and flappers, these particular birds, their feathers became worth more than gold. So at the time, an ounce of egret feathers cost $32, which, if you're thinking about the 20s, that was a substantial sum of money. Because their populations were being diminished, and like I said, it was impacting other birds that lived in the same rookeries with them, North America as a whole started putting forth legislation to help protect these birds. And while I can't, once again, haven't fact-checked this, the Bird Book claimed that this was one of the most successful conservation efforts made in terms of legislation. So since then, these birds are no longer hunted for their feathers, and their populations have recovered, but they have these incredible, I guess egrets is the name, these long, flowy feathers. So the great egret stands 3 to 3.5 feet tall and has a wingspan of 4 feet, but their plumes can get to 4 feet long. So their plumes are even more long and elegant than the birds themselves. And while they're in breeding mode, their face, they have that section between the eye and the beak is called a lore, and it turns green. So I tried to throw that in here, but this was rough. I was really tired this morning, so it's not as obvious. It just looks like I threw color everywhere, which I kind of did. So reflected light and whatnot, but they actually do turn green between the beak and the eye when they're in mating mode. So elegant long feathers, green there, and that's their jam, I guess. That was a rough end to this video. But yeah, otherwise, I don't have much more to say. Once again, thank you so much for all the comments you've left about these birds between Instagram and here. I really appreciate all your feedback, and it's really helped keep me motivated to keep going, because painting every day, recording every day, it's a lot of work. But thank you for being here. I'm glad you're enjoying this, and I will talk to you guys again later in the week with the final video in this series. Take care of yourselves. Talk to you again soon. Bye.